Dad, perfect events. I set my coffee mug down on the kitchen counter and just listened. My son Nathan was standing by the window, his girlfriend Brittany beside him, both of them talking about refinancing and reverse mortgages like I wasn't even in the room. That night, after they'd finally left, I opened Rachel's folder from the safe and called the lawyer in Wyoming about activating what she'd called our escape plan. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up so you understand how I got here and why I had to do what I did. I'm Gerald Pierce, 67 years old, retired fire chief from the Chicago Fire Department. Spent 32 years running into burning buildings while everyone else was running out. My wife Rachel passed away 6 weeks ago from heart disease. She was 65. We'd been married for 41 years. We have one son, Nathan, 39, who works as a corporate finance manager downtown, and my nephew Shane. He's 27, a wildlife photographer. His mother was my younger sister Linda, who died in a car accident when Shane was 8. Rachel and I raised him alongside Nathan. To me, he's just as much my son as Nathan is. That's the family tree. Keep it straight because it gets complicated. The day of Rachel's funeral was cold. February in Chicago, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. St. Patrick's Church was full. Rachel had been a pediatric nurse for 35 years before retiring, and the community loved her. She'd delivered half the babies in the neighborhood and watched them grow up. I sat in the front pew with Nathan on one side, Shane on the other. Shane's hand was on my shoulder during the eulogy, steady and comforting. Nathan spent most of the service checking his phone, scrolling through emails and text messages like he had somewhere more important to be. What I remember most about that day wasn't the service or the prayers or even the graveside ceremony. It was afterward at the house during the reception. I was in the kitchen making coffee for the guests who'd come to pay their respects when I heard Nathan talking to Brittany in the hallway. They didn't know I was there. The house has this weird acoustics thing where sound carries from the front hall into the kitchen if you're standing in just the right spot. The house has to be worth at least $850,000, maybe $900,000, Brittany was saying, her voice low but excited. And you said there's the pension, life insurance, all that retirement money just sitting there. Dad's pension is solid, around $4,200 a month, Nathan replied, plus the $400,000 from Mom's life insurance policy. I checked the documents while he was at the viewing yesterday, found them in his desk drawer. I stood there with a coffee pot in my hand, frozen. My own son had been going through my personal papers while I was saying goodbye to his mother. We need to move fast, though, Brittany continued. Get him to sign a reverse mortgage or some kind of equity release. With his age and the grief, he's not thinking straight. This is perfect timing. Actually, he's vulnerable. Give it a week, Nathan said. Let the funeral dust settle. Then we'll bring it up. Make it sound like we're helping him, looking out for his future. He'll never see it coming. They didn't give it a week. 3 days later, Nathan showed up at the house with his business partner Kyle Henderson and a folder full of financial paperwork. They'd clearly been planning this conversation for a while. Dad, we need to talk about your financial situation, Nathan said, spreading documents across the dining room table like he was conducting a board meeting. Kyle here specializes in estate planning for seniors. We've been looking at your assets and frankly we're concerned. I'm 67, not 90, I told him. And I didn't ask for financial advice. Be realistic, Gerald, Kyle chimed in. He had this way of talking like he was doing you a huge favor while picking your pocket. This house is 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. The maintenance costs alone are probably killing you. Property. Taxes in this neighborhood have tripled in the last 5 years. I've been maintaining this house for 40 years, I said. I think I can manage a few more. It's not about managing, Nathan said, using his corporate finance voice, the one he probably used with difficult clients who didn't want to take his advice. It's about maximizing your assets. You do a reverse mortgage now, you could access $500,000 in equity. Keep living here, but have cash for retirement, medical bills, whatever comes up. And what happens to the house when I die? I asked. Nathan and Kyle exchanged a look, one of those quick glances that said they'd already discussed this part of the plan. Well, eventually the bank would own it, Kyle said carefully, like he was explaining something complicated to a child. But you'd be long gone by then, and really, Nathan here would inherit whatever debt is left along with whatever equity remains. There it was. The real plan. Nathan wanted to get his hands on the house's equity now, While I was alive to sign the papers rather than wait for me to die and inherit it the normal way, he'd get the money immediately, and if there was any debt left over when I died, well, that wasn't his problem. "I'm not interested," I said. Brittany leaned forward, putting on her most sympathetic voice. "Gerald, honey, you've been through major trauma. You're not thinking clearly right now. Rachel would want you to be smart about this, to protect your future." The nerve of this woman, bringing Rachel into their scheme. Rachel, who'd never liked Brittany from the day Nathan brought her home. Rachel, who'd quietly told me once that Brittany looked at our house the way a real estate appraiser would, calculating square footage and market value instead of seeing a home. "Don't you dare bring my wife into this," I said, my voice harder than I'd intended. Nathan held up his hands like he was calming down a confused old man. "Dad, we're just trying to help. This is what families do. They look out for each other." Over the next 2 weeks, it got worse, much worse. Nathan started showing up unannounced with different schemes, different angles, different ways to get me to sign away my house. Home equity loans, where I'd still technically own the property, but owe $400,000 against it. Selling to a family friend who'd let me stay as a tenant in my own home. Something called a life estate that sounded complicated enough to hide the fact that I'd be signing away everything while keeping the illusion of ownership. Kyle kept calling with urgent deadlines. Interest rates were going up. The housing market was about to crash. I needed to act now or lose everything. He had statistics and charts, graphs showing how seniors who didn't plan ahead ended up broke and homeless. Every conversation felt like a high-pressure sales pitch, designed to scare me into making a quick decision. The breaking point came 4 weeks after Rachel's funeral. I came home from the grocery store to find Nathan, Brittany, and Kyle all sitting in my living room. Nathan had used his old house key to let himself in. They were spread out on my furniture like they owned the place, papers scattered across the coffee table, laptops open, looking very much like they were conducting business in my home without my permission. "We need to have a family meeting," Nathan announced when I walked through the door with my grocery bags. "In my house?" I said, without asking me first. "Technically, it's going to be our responsibility soon anyway," Brittany said, not even looking up from whatever she was typing on her laptop. "When you can't handle it anymore." I set the groceries down and looked at them, really looked at them. My son, his gold-digging girlfriend, and his business partner, sitting in the living room where Rachel and I had watched movies for 40 years, where we'd opened Christmas presents, where we'd held Shane when he was crying after his mother died. They were treating it like a conference room. "Sit down, Dad," Nathan said, gesturing to my own recliner like he was granting me permission to sit in my own home. "We've made some decisions." "Decisions?" I repeated. Kyle pulled out a folder, neat and organized, color-coded tabs, everything official looking. "We've consulted with a probate attorney. Given your age and Rachel's recent passing, it makes sense to start protecting assets now. Avoid estate taxes, minimize probate fees. All very standard elder care planning. We found you a beautiful senior community in Schaumburg," Brittany added quickly, pulling up pictures on her laptop. "All one floor, meals included, transportation to medical appointments, activities coordinator. Kyle's already arranged the reverse mortgage paperwork. You'll have plenty of cash for the new place, plus money left over." Nathan spread more documents across the coffee table. "We're listing the house April 1st, he said. "Spring market's the best time to sell. Kyle's colleague is a top realtor in this area. She estimates we'll close within 3 weeks, maybe sooner if we price it right." I looked at them. My son, his girlfriend, his business partner, sitting in the home Rachel and I had built together, dividing it up like I was already dead. Like I had no say in what happened to my own life. "Get out," I said quietly. "Dad, be reasonable," Nathan said, using that patronizing tone you'd use with a confused child. "Get out of my house." "We're trying to help you," Kyle said, gathering up his papers like I was being difficult. "This is standard elder care planning. Every family goes through this process. You're trying to help yourselves to my money," I said, "and Rachel's memory. Now get out before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." Brittany laughed. Actually laughed. "Gerald, you can't call the police on family. Nathan has every right to be here." "Not anymore?" "He doesn't," I said, walking to the front door and opening it. "Out." They left, but not before Nathan turned back at the door. "We'll be back when you're thinking more clearly, Dad. This is happening whether you cooperate or not. We're not going to let you destroy your future because you're too stubborn to accept help." After they'd gone, I stood in the empty living room for a long time. The house felt different now, violated somehow. They'd been going through my things, making plans for my life, treating me like an obstacle to be managed rather than a person with his own will and wishes. I went upstairs to the bedroom, to the closet where Rachel kept her important papers. She'd always been more organized than me, everything labeled and filed properly in those manila folders she bought in bulk from the office supply store. Bills, insurance policies, medical records, tax returns, all of it sorted and dated and stored in fireproof boxes. I found what I was looking for on the top shelf, a manila folder marked, "For Gerald," open after I'm gone in Rachel's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter dated 8 months before her death, written in the blue ink she always used for important things. "My dearest Gerald," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I imagine Nathan is circling like a vulture. I'm sorry I'm not there to see the look on his face when you finally tell him the truth. Here's what you need to know." I read the letter 3 times before I fully understood what she'd done. Then I read the documents she'd included: property deeds, bank statements, trust documents, a timeline of steps to take, names and phone numbers of lawyers, accountants, real estate agents in Wyoming, photographs of a place I'd almost forgotten existed. Rachel had planned everything, every detail, every contingency. She'd seen this coming years before it happened, and she'd built me an escape route that Nathan would never see coming. The next morning, I called the first number on her list, a lawyer named Lauren Davis in Jackson, Wyoming. "Mr. Pierce," she said when I identified myself. "I've been expecting your call. Mrs. Pierce established the trust 3 years ago. Everything's ready when you are. Walk me through it," I said. What Rachel had done was this. 4 years ago, when her heart condition was first diagnosed and the doctors started using words like limited time and quality of life, she'd started planning. She knew, even if I didn't want to admit it, that her time was running short. And she knew Nathan well enough to predict exactly what would happen after she died. The ranch we'd honeymooned at in Wyoming 45 years ago had belonged to her Uncle Charlie. When he died 18 years ago, he'd left it to Rachel in his will. It was a 520-acre ranch in the Teton Valley, about 40 minutes from Jackson. Rachel had kept it all these years, renting it out to a local family called the Hendersons for minimal rent, in exchange for maintenance and upkeep. But 3 years ago, Rachel had quietly stopped renting it out. She had hired contractors to renovate the main house completely. New roof, new plumbing, new electrical systems, modern kitchen with granite countertops, updated bathrooms with walk-in showers. She'd had the old barn converted into a photography studio with professional lighting and a darkroom. The bunkhouse had been turned into a guest cottage with its own kitchen and bathroom. She'd established a trust, funded with proceeds from selling some Microsoft stock she'd inherited from her parents, to cover property taxes and maintenance for the next 25 years. The trust was set up to pay all expenses automatically, so I'd never have to worry about bills or upkeep. Then she'd set up a second trust. Over the course of 3 years, she'd gradually transferred money from our joint savings account, small amounts at a time, nothing that would trigger my attention when I glanced at bank statements. 2,000 here, 3,000 there, always with explanations that made sense. Medical bills, charitable donations, gifts for Shane's birthday. By the time she died, she'd moved $450,000 into that Wyoming trust, leaving just enough in our regular accounts to look normal. The Chicago house had a second mortgage I didn't know about. Rachel had taken it out quietly 2 years ago for $180,000. She'd used that money to fund the Wyoming renovations and the trust accounts. The monthly payments were set up as automatic withdrawals from an account I never looked at, one she'd opened years ago for her nursing association dues. What this meant was simple but devastating for Nathan. The Chicago house that he was so eager to get his hands on had almost no equity. Between the original mortgage and the second mortgage, there was maybe $60,000 of actual value there. Everything else, Rachel had quietly moved to Wyoming. She left you a way out, Lauren Davis told me on the phone, and she left very specific instructions. You're to transfer ownership of the Chicago house to Nathan immediately. Give it to him. Let him have exactly what he's asking for. Just give it to him, I said, along with both mortgages. He'll be responsible for all the debt. The letter from Mrs. Pierce suggests you tell him it's his inheritance, given early. She thought he'd be so excited about getting the house that he wouldn't read the fine print until it was too late. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Rachel, even in death, knew exactly how to handle our son. What about Shane? I asked. Mrs. Pierce left very specific instructions about Shane, Lauren said. There's a fully equipped photography studio in the converted barn, designed specifically for wildlife photography. She wanted him to have it. She also established a trust fund for his equipment and business expenses. Lauren walked me through the rest of it. The ranch was completely paid off, modernized, and ready for occupancy. The trust would cover all property taxes, insurance, and maintenance indefinitely. All I had to do was activate the plan and follow Rachel's timeline. The next 2 weeks were the most careful. Acting job of my life. I couldn't let Nathan know I was planning anything. I had to play the part of a grieving widower who was slowly coming around to his point of view. Nathan called every other day to check on me, always asking how I was feeling, whether I had given any more thought to their suggestions. I let my resistance soften gradually. Yes, maybe the house was getting to be too much. Yes, maybe a change of scenery would be good for me. I let him think he was wearing me down, that his persistence was finally paying off. Meanwhile, Shane and I were packing, just the essentials at first. Clothes, personal items, Rachel's jewelry, photo albums, anything with real sentimental value. Shane helped me every evening after his day job, coming over under the pretense of helping me sort through Rachel's things. He's really doing this, Shane said one night when I explained what was happening. His own father? He really is, I said, and Rachel knew he would. I showed him the letter. Shane. Read it twice, his jaw getting tighter with every paragraph. She was brilliant, he said quietly. She saw this coming years ago. She knew our family better than I wanted to admit, I said. We were methodical about it, rented a storage unit across town, and gradually moved things there. Rachel's china, the antique furniture that had belonged to my parents, books, artwork, anything with real value beyond what Nathan would expect to see in the house. We left all the big obvious stuff, the furniture he'd grown up with, anything he'd notice if it went missing. The close call came on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I'd just loaded a box of Rachel's medical textbooks into my truck when Brittany pulled into the driveway in her BMW. I slammed the trunk shut and tried to look casual. "Gerald!" she called out, getting out of her car with that fake smile she always wore. Perfect timing. "I wanted to talk to you about the kitchen remodel." "The kitchen remodel?" I repeated. "For after you move out," she said brightly, like we'd already agreed to this plan. "Nathan and I have decided to keep the house instead of selling it right away. Maybe use it as a rental property for a few years. But the kitchen is so outdated. I'm thinking granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, maybe knock out that wall between the kitchen and dining room to create more of an open concept." "You're planning to remodel my kitchen," I said slowly. "Well, it'll be our kitchen soon," she said. "Nathan told me you've basically agreed to the reverse mortgage. We're just waiting for you to make it official." I hadn't agreed to anything, but I just smiled and nodded. "We're still working out the details," I said. "What's in the box?" She was looking at my truck, trying to see what I'd been loading. "Old medical books of Rachel's," I said. "Thought I'd donate them to the nursing school at Northwestern. You know, decluttering like you suggested." She bought it completely. "That's wonderful, Gerald. It's so healthy that you're letting go of the past and moving forward." If she'd looked more carefully, she would have seen that my truck was packed with boxes and suitcases. But Brittany never really looked at anything that didn't directly benefit her. She was too busy planning how to spend money that wasn't hers yet. The final meeting happened 5 weeks to the day after Rachel's funeral. I'd called it myself, told Nathan I'd made a decision about the house, and wanted to discuss it with everyone involved. He arrived within an hour, bringing Brittany and Kyle like I'd expected. Shane was already there, sitting quietly in the corner. I'd asked him to come witness whatever happened. Nathan and his crew barely acknowledged Shane, which was typical. They'd never seen him as real family. "I've thought about what you said," I told them, settling into my leather recliner, the one Rachel had given me for my 60th birthday. "About the house being too big, about making a fresh start. You know what? You're absolutely right. It's time for a change." Nathan and Brittany exchanged victorious glances. I could practically see them calculating commissions and spending money in their heads. "I'm going to sign the house over to you," I continued. "Complete ownership transfer. You can take possession immediately. That's wonderful, Dad, Nathan said. This is really the best decision for everyone. I think so too, I said. I pulled out the folder Lauren Davis had prepared and FedExed to me. The deed transfer documents are all here. You'll need to sign as well, accepting the transfer and all associated responsibilities. Associated responsibilities? Kyle asked, his lawyer instincts finally kicking in. The property taxes, homeowner's insurance, both mortgages, I said casually. All of that transfers with the deed. Standard procedure in any property transfer. Mortgages? Brittany's smile faltered for the first time. Plural? There's the original mortgage, about $220,000 remaining, I said, and the second mortgage. Rachel took out 2 years ago for $180,000. The lawyer explained everything in these documents. I watched them read, watched Nathan's face go from confused to pale to angry, watched Kyle's hands start to shake as he flipped through page after page of debt obligations. Watched Brittany's mouth fall open as she realized what this meant. This house has a $400,000 debt, Nathan said finally. You told us it was almost paid off. I never told you any such thing, I replied calmly. You assumed it was paid off. You never actually asked to see the mortgage statements. Who the hell takes out a second mortgage at 65? Kyle demanded. Rachel did, I said. She had her reasons. All perfectly legal, all documented. This is insane, Brittany said, her voice getting shrill. With property taxes and insurance, this place costs $5,200 a month to maintain. We can't afford that. Then sell it, I suggested, like you were planning to anyway. Kyle was furiously tapping on his calculator. After transfer fees, realtor commissions, and paying off both mortgages, you'd maybe clear $150,000. Maybe. That's assuming you can even find a buyer willing to pay asking price in this market. Market fluctuations? I said with a shrug. Can't predict these things. Nathan stood up abruptly. There's something else going on here. Where's the rest of the money? Mom's life insurance, the savings accounts, your retirement funds? The life insurance was $400,000, I said. It covered Rachel's medical bills and funeral expenses. Every penny is accounted for if you'd like to see the receipts. That wasn't technically a lie. Rachel had spent the life insurance money, just not on what they assumed. You're not keeping this house either, Nathan said suddenly, his finance brain finally working. You're going somewhere else. Smart boy, I said. Too late, but smart. I'm retiring to Wyoming, I said. Already closed out all the Chicago bank accounts, transferred everything to Jackson Hole. I'm moving next week. Wyoming, Brittany said. What's in Wyoming? Rachel and I honeymooned there 45 years ago, I said. Seemed like a fitting place for a new beginning. So you're just dumping a debt-ridden house on us and disappearing? Nathan's voice cracked a little. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for, I said. The house. Early inheritance. Just like you wanted. The fact that it's not the gold mine you expected isn't my problem. This is fraud, Nathan said. Mom couldn't have moved that much money without your knowledge. She could and she did, I said. Her money, her decisions. All legal, all documented. Lauren Davis in Wyoming can send you copies of everything if you want proof. I stood up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have packing to finish. The movers come Monday. You can't do this, Brittany said, and I swear there were actual tears in her eyes. I already have, I said. Shane, you ready? Shane stood up and picked up 2 duffel bags I'd positioned by the door. Ready? You're taking him? Nathan said. Of course you are. Shane's more family to me than you've been in years, I said. He's coming with me. Wyoming's got plenty of space. Ranch? Nathan said. What ranch? But I was done explaining. Shane and I walked out the front door of that house for the last time. Behind us, I could hear them starting to fight among themselves, voices getting louder as the reality of what just happened began to sink in. How do you feel? Shane asked as we got into my truck. Free, I said. Nathan kept the Chicago house for 4 months, desperately trying to find a buyer who'd pay enough to make it worthwhile. He and Brittany broke up after 6 weeks when she realized there was no money coming. Kyle stopped returning Nathan's calls when it became clear there were no commissions to be earned. Eventually, Nathan sold the house for $480,000, barely enough to pay off both mortgages and cover the realtor fees. He walked away with $47,000 and a credit score destroyed by 4 months of struggling to make. Mortgage payments he couldn't afford. The ranch in Wyoming was everything Rachel had promised. 520 acres in the Teton Valley with mountains that looked like something out of a movie. The main house was beautiful, all logs and stone, with huge windows facing the sunrise. Rachel had thought of everything. The kitchen had a gas range because she knew I liked to cook. The master bedroom had a reading nook because she knew I'd need somewhere quiet to remember her. Shane moved into the photography studio in the converted barn. Within 2 months, he'd established a business photographing wildlife for magazines and selling prints to tourists in Jackson. He was happier than I'd ever seen him. I found Rachel's final letter 6 months later, tucked inside her favorite cookbook. If you're reading this, you made it. You're free. Don't feel guilty about Nathan. He made his choices. Live the life we always dreamed about. I love you. A year later, Nathan called. Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. Could I come visit? I thought about it, about forgiveness, about second chances, about what Rachel would have wanted. Call me next week, I said. We'll see. The sun's setting now over the Tetons. Shane's in his studio, working on a series about elk behavior. I'm sitting on the porch Rachel designed for me, drinking coffee, watching the mountains turn purple in the evening light. It's a good life. Quiet, honest, simple. Rachel always did know best. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are really just waiting for you to die so they can divide up what's left. But real love protects you even from the grave. The greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's having someone who knows you well enough to save you from your own family when you're too heartbroken to save yourself.